Hello and welcome to a very special bonus episode of the Loading Podcast. First things first, West can't be with us for this little opening section tonight because he is busy launching the Neck Deep merch store. So, if you've got some spare pennies and you like yourself a little bit of pop punk, head over there, chuck him some money, pick up some merch, support the pop punk scene and all that, yada yada yada. But on to what we've got coming your way because this is a really cool episode. We love talking about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater because, as we mentioned, that game has had a huge impact on how we've developed as people and our music taste and everything else. So we thought we'd do some more talking about the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games because why not? They're important games. But joining us in today's episode, we've got the one and only Steve Caballero. Yes, one of the biggest skateboarding legends of all time. I mean, we're talking about one of the earliest members of the Burns Brigade, a guy who's credited with inventing numerous skateboarding tricks, including the frontside board slide, the fakie backside 360, one of the first ever skateboarders to release a professional skate shoe. The man's huge. Like, he's huge and he's worth a lot of money, but he's one of the most humble people we've probably ever spoken to. Like, such a nice guy, such a sound guy. And not only is he a skateboarding legend, but this guy has been a huge part of the punk rock scene in California. I mean, he's played bass and electric guitar in bands such as The Faction, Odd Man Out, Shovelhead, Soda, and now he's in a brand new band called Urethane. So we spent some time with Steve talking about just what it was like growing up as a skateboarder in the 70s and 80s, changes in the skateboarding scene, what he thought of the games, because Steve was introduced into the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 onwards. He was responsible for getting bands like Bodyjar and Milencollin onto the soundtrack because he was friends with those guys, so he put in a good word and got them on. So we spoke a little bit about that. There's some really cool stories in there, but also just learned more about some of his musical escapades, which are pretty mad, to be fair. I mean, he's played on stage with Blink-182, Metallica, I think he was saying. Like, he's played on stage with all of these huge bands and was just so blasé about it, just like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, it's like, no, it is. His new band, their album is coming out soon. Check them out on socials. I mean, you'll hear the name again during the actual episode, but it is Urethane. That's Urethane. A little bit of cool info. They've got the vocalist from H2O and the vocalist from Pennywise doing guesties on the album, so we can't wait to hear this. But yeah, I'm going to stop chatting now and we're going to dive straight in because we really enjoyed this. Hope you guys enjoy it too. As always, if you do like the episode, please share it with your friends, support us on socials. You can find us at loading_podcast, and that's it. Right, cheers guys. Awesome. Right. So, Steve, first up, really appreciate you doing this. Like, thank you so much. Just to give you some background, me and West grew up playing the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games. Like a lot of people our age, it's safe to say the game's pretty much changed our lives, like introduced us to our favourite bands, like friendship circles and stuff like that. So these were games that were really, really important. What I'd like to get out of today, if it's all right, is this podcast is kind of like exploring the relationship between video games and music in particular. Music has obviously got some really strong links with the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series. You've been in loads of bands throughout your life. I read that you got, I think, Milencollin and Bodyjar, I think, on the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 soundtrack. Is that correct?
That's true.
Yeah, so it'd just be cool to like learn more about how all of these bands ended up getting on the soundtracks. I'd love to learn more about your musical influences, some of the stories from when you were playing at gigs and stuff like that. But just to start with, Steve, could you tell us more about how you actually got into skateboarding and kind of like what the big movements were in the skate scene throughout the 70s and the 80s?
That's a lot of changes.
How long have you got?
That's like, yeah, where do I start? Well, basically, I got into skating because it was something that was very attractive to me. Very challenging, something that I did with the neighborhood kids. We either rode bikes or rode skateboards, and everybody in our neighborhood at least had some type of skateboard, We also had skateboard magazines that we would look at when I'd go to the convenience store, go buy candy, and then I'd look at the skateboard magazines. And also, it was just something that was very attractive. Like there were things happening in Los Angeles that weren't happening in Northern California, in San Jose, where I lived. I saw that there were skateboard parks being built in Southern California. Not only were people riding skateboards in pools and building their own ramps, but there's actually places, I want to say around 77, 78, so they were starting to build these little skateboard parks. They were privately owned. They weren't city owned. So people were investing money into these places for people to skate. And I ended up coming down to Southern California one time on a trip with my father and one of my best friends, and we stopped off at the Concrete Wave, what was in Anaheim, and it was the very first skateboard park I ever skated. And after I got my membership and skated there, I just fell in love with it, and I wanted to skateboard all the time. And then I would say about maybe 6 months later, I heard there were going to be some skateboard parks being built in Northern California, where I was from. And the skate parks were called Winchester Skate Park and Campbell Skate Park. And once those were built, I ended up getting my membership there, and I would go every weekend and skate. And eventually I got on the team, which led me to travel around the Bay Area to skate other skateboard parks and enter competitions, which led me to come down to Southern California to enter a competition. I got noticed by a gentleman named Stacy Peralta, who was a pro that I looked up to, who rode for G&S skateboards. And after his career was pretty much ending, he wanted to start his own company called Powell Peralta. And he ended up sponsoring me as an amateur skateboarder in 1979. And that's how pretty much how I got into it. And
yeah.
Got into but I could go on and on and on. And
yeah.
What's happened since my introduction to skateboarding and playing it on a television, in a video game. I mean, there's so much that's gone through since then. You'd be here for hours.
I think it's strange that you mentioned how people did get into it through the TV and a video game. Like my first introduction to skateboarding was through the first Tony Hawk's game, because I'm from a small village in North Wales in the UK, and we didn't have, it wasn't a thing. We didn't see people skateboarding around. And I think for me and a lot of my friends, that was kind of the gateway into it, which is an interesting thing to think about, where you were obviously there towards the beginning of it, and then we're here just playing it on a TV first, and then thinking, oh, cool, I should try that.
Well, yeah, technology. Back when I first started skateboarding, there was really there's no VHS tapes. Nothing was really available on television. My only access to skateboarding was through magazines. Mm-hmm. There was no cell phones back then. There was no video games back then. I've seen it. So basically, social media would be the platform, what it was, what that was attracting skateboarding to me. Mm-hmm. And that was print magazine.
Yeah.
Something I'd love to know more about, what were like the social cliques in skateboarding like back then? Because I know like you think of skateboarding now, you've got like the hip hop kids, you've got the punk rock kids. I spoke to Mullen a couple of months ago, and he said when skateboarding came about, the whole vert skateboarding thing actually came from like a surfer scene, and you had these like surfer guys who were kind of like at the forefront of skateboarding. Can you tell us more about that? Because from what Mullen was saying, it seemed like you had these surfer dudes, they had like their own way of skateboarding, and then kind of like a new generation of like punk rock kids came into the scene, then it kind of took off from there.
Well, I mean, I live like 40 minutes from the beach, so the surfer scene wasn't really around me.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in Silicon Valley, which is in San Jose, where actually all the tech, you know, is there now. But for me, I was just kind of like a neighborhood kid that used to like to ride bicycles, you know, and you know that surfer scene wasn't really around, so I didn't really know anything about it. I was born and raised in a neighborhood that was predominantly Black and Hispanic, you know, and if there was any group of Caucasians around there, it was really small. So the music that I was into was kind of pretty much like R&B and disco or you know, something like that. You know, I wasn't into rock and roll. You know, so when I got into skateboarding, I traveled to the other side of town, which was complete opposite. And a lot of the guys at the skateboard parks were listening to rock and roll. So that was pretty much my introduction to rock and roll. If I probably wasn't going to a skate park or going on that side of town, I probably wouldn't have been attracted to that type of music. So after I went to the skateboard park and made friends there, I was listening to what kind of music they were playing with the cassette tape in their stereos. And it was like AC/DC, Cheap Trick, and Aerosmith, you know. And I would have never, ever even want to listen to those bands. But because they were listening to it, that I felt like that was the choice of music for skateboarder. I wanted to fit in, you know. So I told my mom to drive me to Tower Records and so I could go buy those 3 tapes so I could be a skateboarder. And then from then on, the music kind of changed really drastically. You know, it went from rock and roll to new wave, you know, and then I was starting to listen to bands like Devo and Gary Newman and Missy Persons, you know, B-52s, the Cars. And then all of a sudden in 1980, I hear about, you know, this band, the Sex Pistols, and then the Ramones, the Dead Kennedys. And then I just started searching deeper into that type of music. I could tell that musical influence was changing, you know, and I started getting into LA punk bands like, you know, Adolescence, Social Distortion, Circle Jerks, the Buzzcocks, you know, the Clash. And then from then on, I just fell in love with that type of music because it was hard, it was aggressive, it was spontaneous. And that's the feeling that I got with skateboarding. And I felt like they kind of went hand in hand with each other. So that type of music kind of stuck with me. And as a skateboarder, in the environment that I was with. But just like skateboarding, it wasn't looked at very much as something that was very popular or respected, you know, and neither was punk rock music. Either it was just kind of like a DIY type of like underground. You know, you didn't have to be really good at skateboarding to enjoy skateboarding. You didn't have to be really good at playing music to enjoy punk rock music, you know. So they kind of went hand in hand. But the more that you put yourself out there and did these things, you actually ended up developing a skill, you know, and you know, and I became professional at both those things over time. And so now it's just interesting that skateboarding is now respected as a legitimate sport, because team sports were the things back in the late 70s, early 80s that were respected. And now this year, skateboarding is made its way into the Olympics, which is the ultimate place to be as a respect as an athlete, and punk rock music has kind of gone that same way too. It was looked at as very not very well respected. And a lot of bands have come out of the early stages of learning to love the music. And so I'm in a new band right now called Urethane, and we just finished a 12-song record that's going to be released in September.
That's class.
And all my music influences that I've had from first learning about punk rock in 1980, you're going to hear them in this new band now. And I'm super proud of this project, and it's all due to all my influences from skateboarding to punk rock to everything that's gone in between when I first discovered both of them.
Mm-hmm. You said something there with when you were talking about punk music. You didn't exactly have to be like a crazy good musician to start playing and to have something like tangible from it. That's probably one of the reasons that I got into the similar type of music when I was a bit younger. It was just because I would hear these bands like Aerosmith or something like that and hear them playing these solos, and I'd be like, I can never play that. That is ridiculous. I'm never going to be able to do that. So finding a genre of music for me that I heard on record or something, I could go, I can do that. I can play these 4 or 5 chords. Kind of, I don't know, that cemented something in me when I was younger as well. So it's cool to hear it coming from somebody else as well.
No, it was cool. When I started a band in 1982 called The Faction, and I started out playing bass. And I remember being in the studio recording our first 45 and thinking to myself, man, I've only been playing bass for 6 months, and now I'm in the studio making our own record. So I was really tripped out about that. I was like, oh, it's really cool that we can actually do this ourselves.
Yeah.
So it made me fall in love with the fact that I could play music, be in a band, and people like the same style of music,
Yeah.
So I felt like I kind of fit in that way as a musician as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and over time I learned how to play the instrument a little bit better and better. And then I switched to guitar, and I've gone back and forth between bass and guitar over the years. And, but I just love the freedom that you get, the creative freedom with music. And it does go hand in hand with art. And, I just finished a tour, just last week. I was out for 5 days with punk rock and paintbrushes, and it's all about the music scene and the art scene and how they all kind of mesh together. And our common denominator through all that is skateboarding,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely.
How important do you think the games have been then for the wider discovery of music, punk rock bands in particular? For me, it was a case of West, you're probably the same. We're what, 9 years old, I think, when we first started playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. And
would have been around that, yeah.
Yeah, and we're getting introduced to bands like Suicidal Tendencies, Goldfinger, Ramones. We're not going to hear those bands as a 9-year-old otherwise. Do you know what I mean? Unless our parents are proper into punk rock or hardcore or whatever else. And mine were. I don't know about yours. So
mine definitely were not.
So for us, these games were so important for shaping our own music tastes. If you're still very active in the punk rock scene now, Steve, do you often hear from other people within the scene because of Tony Hawk's I discovered this band, or because of Tony Hawk's I'm doing this and I'm doing that? How important were the games for music, do you think?
Very important. I'll tell you, to be honest, the video game got a really bad rap when it first came out, because a lot of hardcore skateboarders felt like it was taking kids away from actually doing it. in person and rather just playing it, on television. But for me, I've always looked at any kind of media or any kind of outlet to be a positive outlet. I mean, even like the X Games looked there's always a hardcore group that wants to control and be selfish with it, and I'm sure that happens with punk rock too. It's like as soon as a band gets famous and gets on the radio, it's like it's not liked anymore, because now this band that I discovered, now everybody likes it and everybody wants to be part of it. And so to me, I think that those guys are the real posers. The guys that are the core guys, they say, hey, I discovered this band, it's my band, and now everyone listens to it. You guys are a bunch of posers. Like, no, the guys that don't want to share it are the posers. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because now they don't like this band anymore because everybody likes them. Not because they're not good. It's because everybody likes them. So for me, even like with all the media and everything, I always welcomed it. It didn't matter if outside companies that had nothing to do with skateboarding were putting in money to just promote skateboarding. I was all for it, always. And I knew that when you did that, it would benefit everybody in a positive way, because it would just share the love of skateboarding, maybe share the love of punk rock music to the world, which makes things happen, to eventually skateboarding being known worldwide, punk rock music being known worldwide, to now, there's a public skateboard park in every city that you can actually go and skate for free. And you don't have to pay. And I'd never in my wildest dreams, when I first started skateboarding in 76, 12 years old, that I could actually go to a skateboard park for free in any city I wanted to, so that's a dream come true. But back to the video game and back to, being influenced and, like I said, it wasn't very well receptive. Yeah. But when I look back, hindsight now, the tricks that I see these kids doing, I was doing those with my thumbs in 99, 2000. And never would I imagine I would do I would see a kid do like a 360 kickflip to a grind to a flip out of a ledge or a rail. I mean, you just dreamt that with your hands. And now when I see it in person, it's amazing to me. And I have to say that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater's game was a huge influence to where skateboarding is now, and where kids can imagine what they can do. And I always feel like everything that we do starts with a dream or a thought, whether you're an artist, a musician, or an athlete. And the game has really helped us open up our imaginations to what's possible. Yeah. Everything starts with a thought or a dream, and we make it a reality because we believe in it. We believe in ourselves, and we push the limits to get to that place. And the game has really, really enhanced the sport in so many ways. When you've had guys going like, dude, what are you doing playing that video game? Just like put that thing down, get off your television and go outside and do it. Well, now that these guys are doing tricks that are crazy, I can't believe what's happening. Yeah.
It's almost as if the game's helped them plan like this crazy line that they're going to do.
It has, and back to the popularity, and at first when I first got into skateboarding, when I turned pro in 1980, people would ask me what I did for a living. I said, well, I'm a professional skateboarder. And then their next question is, well, can you make a living off that? When X Games started in 95, and people asked me, hey, what do you do for a living? And I would say, I'm a professional skateboarder. And they'd be like, oh, are you in the X Games? And then so it changed. And then, so now it's like years down from the line, it's like when people ask what people do for a living, I'm sure the next question is, oh, are you hoping to get into the Olympics someday? Yeah. And unfortunately in our society, money drives things. And when people see that you can make a lot of money off a certain trade or a creative outlet, it tends to be respected, you know, and put on this pedestal. And that's the sadness of our society and how people respect things is because of how successful you are monetarily, not the fact that you just love this and, you know, you're creative in a way where you share things with the people that have common goals and want to be influenced, encouraged that way. But yeah, so I've seen it go from no money to millions and millions of dollars. So
how was that for the actual skateboarders themselves? Like you and your friends to go from like you were doing well, obviously, like before the games came out, but for the games to reach this level of like astronomical success that I think a lot of people didn't see coming, because those games have done very well. Like all of the skaters who were in those original games like still seem insanely grounded. Like there's still normal people, there's still cool guys and girls, like despite how well they've done off that game. Whereas and skateboarding in general, whereas in other industries it might be a case of like people make some money, then they go off and their egos get really big or whatever else, but all of the skateboarders have like stayed really grounded. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I can't really speak for any individuals and stuff, but we all have egos. You know, just some are just bigger than others.
Yeah.
You know, we're all have issues, have problems, famous or not famous. You know, everyone's struggling with something. You know, so it really depends on your background and your family life and how you're brought up and how you approach life. And you know, life's not all about just being successful, making a lot of money, because that doesn't bring you happiness.
Yeah.
You know, I know that firsthand.
Yeah.
Because I've lived it. You know, I've had a taste of it. So I can't speak for everybody else, but I can speak what works for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah. I think it might even be along the lines of like, it's something that you were passionate about and enjoyed doing, and now a nice byproduct of that is that you just get to do it all the time and not really have to concern yourself too much with like a normal 9-to-5 job. That's how it felt for me. I played like in a band, and that would be what happened with us. We kept going and going until we made some money, and then now we just get to enjoy doing that, and that is our job, so to speak, even though it doesn't feel like one.
Yeah, I mean, that's an argument that I'll always have with people. Is like, you know, what is it like to not have a real job? Well, a real job, what does that mean? Is that something that you don't enjoy doing?
Yeah.
It seems like people who have real jobs don't really enjoy those things. You know?
Yeah.
I enjoy my non-real job, if that's what they want to call it. You know, because I have the freedom to do whatever I want on my own time. I'm my own boss, you know, but I have the freedom to make it grow or make it as minimal as possible. So I put in a lot of work to get where I'm at. It's nothing's been handed to me. You know, I put hours and hours of work, you know, so just in a different way, you know.
Yeah.
But it's been a collective of different types of jobs and people who have the same passion and same drive to make something successful. You know, I'm on the creative athlete, you know, part of it. There's other people that work behind the scenes to help me be who I am, you know, but also I give them the ability to have a job to go to 9 to 5 to sell the products that are endorsed by me or by them. And, you know, so it's teamwork, whether you're shipping the products, you're screen printing the boards, you know, you're on the phone all the time with manufacturers, to the guys, you know, to like myself, just trying to promote the company and grow the sport and make it exciting for people to want the product. So it's a team effort, you know. So I just, you know, I like to I'm an entrepreneur, and also I'm an artist in a way where I like to see things develop from nothing to something, and so I put a lot of work and thought into what works and what doesn't. And the years of experience has helped me with the wisdom of business, and I can see it from far away what's going to work and what's not going to work. So I kind of separate myself from certain things that I feel that are negative in my life, and feel like, if I put a lot of work into that, it doesn't seem like it's going to pan out. So I'll just move into a different direction. And that's kind of the same way that I approach skateboarding. So I would try all these tricks. Some tricks were super harder than others. I would kind of stay away from the really, really hard ones that I would take days to learn, rather than to try to learn an easier trick and build my repertoire of bag of skateboard tricks. So I just use the skateboard mentality of failing to succeed in everything that I do. Yeah.
Yeah, good outlook.
It's still working, I guess.
Oh, definitely.
Seems to be working.
Yeah.
Marriage-wise, not really, but relationship-wise hasn't been working. But yeah, other than that, every business aspect that I've put myself into has been pretty successful in a way.
Awesome.
And the bands as well, Steve, we can go, because the bands have been successful as well, right? Like, can you just talk us through what it was like? Because we've heard about what it was like skating. Like, what kind of gigs were you playing back then? Like, what venues were you playing, and like what kind of kids were coming down to the shows from the Faction gigs right up to the Shovelhead gigs and stuff like that?
Well, Faction was my first band that I was part of. It was a punk rock band, with a bunch of skateboarders that I met at the skate park in 1980. All the parks closed, so I ended up building a ramp in my backyard. And so that's where I would skate, because there was no place to skate anymore. That's the time of the crash of skateboarding, skateboard parks. We all had to go out and try to find our own way. And I built a ramp in my backyard. Friends would come over, and we started going to shows together, punk rock shows. And from there, I started collecting the records and just listening to the music and wanting to learn how to play bass. And then from there, we just started a band. And it was 1982. We formed the Faction through just skateboard buddies. We played local gigs around. We made our own records. I made my own T-shirts. My dad owned a printing shop. I printed my own T-shirts and stickers. We made our own zines because skateboard magazines were no longer as well. So we Xerox pictures and made our own. I made a zine called Skate Punk that covered the skate scene and punk scene around San Jose. By 1983, we put out an album on our own. By 1984, we went on our own tour around the U.S. I played bass. We traveled all the way for 30 days in a small van. We went all the way down to New York and to Miami. We played CBGB's.
Wow.
That's a claim to fame for me in 1984 to play there with JFA. A punk band that I was influenced by, and because they were skaters too, helped me form the Faction. Gave me that inspiration to put in another album. And then by 1985, I switched to guitar because bands like Social Distortion, The Adolescents really got me like, oh, we should have two guitars in the band. It would sound really powerful, really melodic and cool. So we toured the U.S. again. We brought a band with us, and we played CBGB's one more time as well, and just toured for the U.S. on our own. Never sponsored by a major label. And by 1985, we kind of broke up because the punk scene was getting a little rowdy and weird with skinheads, kind of just ruining their own scene, and it was just, it wasn't fun anymore, so then couple years later, I started kept playing guitar, and I hooked up with our bass player for the faction, and we started another band called Odd Man Out, and that was a band that was a little bit a different type of music. At that time, I was really into the Mission UK, into U2, The Cure. So I started getting into that kind of style type of music, but I was still getting booked at punk shows because they knew I was in the Factions punk band. But here's this other band called Odd Man Out. It was more mellow or a different kind of singer. Yeah. So it was kind of an odd mix of being associated with punk bands. We weren't a punk band, you know. And so we did that for a while. That broke up after a while because I was this is when skateboarding was starting to get really huge. This was 1987, 88, and skateboarding was huge, and I was traveling all over the place. I was going over to Europe, and we made all these videos. Now skateboarding was now being pretty mainstream. You know, we starred in some cool movies like Police Academy 4, which was also attracting skateboarders in that sense as well. Yeah. So I left that band, and then started another band in the early 90s called Shovelhead, like you said. And that was more of kind of like, I was going downtown a lot and going to clubs and watching bands play, and the whole like kind of rock and grunge, you know, was going around. And still, there was still a lot of, the punk scene was going on. But the guys that I hooked up to play with, just the band that we put together tended to be more of like kind of an alternative grunge rock band, you know. And here once again, we're starting to like play with punk bands, which was kind of like not really the same style of music. Yeah. But I think because of my association with skateboarding and my first band, I was tainted of like, you're going to just be playing
always the punk
all the time, you know. To the point where I quit that band Shovelhead, and I'm like, man, I need to start a punk band because that's pretty much what all I listen to. That's all people want to hear. So then I ended up in '95 when X Games was super huge. The Warped Tour just started. I started a band called Soda, and that was like a power pop band with the female singer. And we played the Warped Tour a few times on a side stage, and that one was the one that I felt was radio friendly and very melodic, and all the guys were really great musicians, and we put out a really good album. That's the one I felt like that was going to be the band that I was going to make it in and be able to tour and everything. And then because of some internal things of getting along with some of the members, I left that band after 11 months, and I felt like my sanity was more important than the fame and fortune that was going to come out of that. And that's how I am with things. If I don't enjoy them, I don't really care how successful it's going to be. I need to enjoy it, and I need to feel like I have the freedom to express myself and not have all these issues and all this negativity, you know. So I didn't play in bands for a long time and just continued to do like these little faction reunions. Over the years, up until last year, we played our very last faction reunion, you know, and I said I just kind of want to call that quits because I felt like there was no room for improvement, creativity. We're just playing the same old songs that we wrote in the 80s. You know, not that it wasn't fun playing them, but for me as a musician, I like to keep growing, and so I started a new band here, and like I've got together with a group of guys that are very professional players and very creative and very fun and outgoing, and I feel like I finally arrived. And when you guys hear this band, I think you'll think so too. And this is one band that I feel like would definitely fit in very well in the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games for sure.
Get it on the next one.
Oh yeah, I'll be shooting some music to them too if they ever come out with another one.
Oh, dude, get it in there. Definitely. Yeah, I'm excited to hear it. Did you say it's when's it releasing? Sorry.
Well, our first single, the album's done. Our first single releases on the 28th of this month.
Cool.
And we're going to release a single every month. So the second one will be probably August 25th. Then right before the album comes out in September, we're going to release another single. And I think the single comes out in September around 25th, 26th. Yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear it. If it's the 26th, that's my birthday. What a great present.
There we go.
I think I got the date right. It might be, I know we're playing some shows right then. We're playing a record release party, but I'm not sure. It may come out digitally before. But we just announced it, a week ago that we're coming out with an album.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited to give it a listen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
How did you, I'd love to know then, how did you meet the Milencollin and Bodyjar guys then? Because they were some of my favorite tracks from the series, and I'd love to know about how that relationship came about and how you got those songs on the game as well. Because was it a case with the soundtracks that a lot of the skaters in the game kind of chipped in with their own personal suggestions, or what was that process like?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that being I wasn't in Pro Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1. I played that game religiously and learned how to play it, but I ended up getting to become a character in number 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then whatever came out after that. The way that I met Milencollin was actually really cool. I was at a local skate shop in San Jose, and they were giving away these demo tapes or promo copies. It might have been a CD. I'm not sure. Did we have CDs back then? When did CDs come out?
I don't even know.
I'm not sure the exact date. It would have been mid-90s, maybe early 90s. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of when I first heard about them. And so I played their song, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. It's a really, really cool sounding band. And so then I went on this tour, and I went to go look for all their music. So I went to a bunch of record stores, and I bought all their 45s. I go through the bins and looking for everything that Milencollin had produced before I even met them. And I remember I heard they were going to be playing in San Francisco. And so I had Lance Mountain, my teammate from the 80s, the Bones Brigade, staying with me. And I go, Lance, there's this band called Milencollin playing in San Francisco, which was an hour away from where I live. We got to go see them play. This is my favorite band. I want to go see them play. Will you come with me? So yeah. So I went, bought a ticket, and I was up at the, before they got on stage, there was a band that opened up for them. And then I went to their merch booth, and I wanted to buy a t-shirt. Yeah. And I guess their merch guy tripped out that me and Lance were there just at the show and at the merch booth. So he ran and went into backstage and told the band that we were out in the audience, and Steve Caballero was going to buy a t-shirt from our booth. So those guys came out, and they were super stoked that we were at the show. I'd never seen them play. I got to see them play. And then I got to talk to them after the show, and I was telling them about, I'm going to be going on this thing called the Warped Tour. And they're like, oh, we got picked to go on the Warped Tour too. We'll be on there in 99. I go, well, shoot. And I would love to hang out with you guys. And I'm going to be on that tour for a whole month. So when that tour came, I was really looking forward to go on the Warped Tour, the band's Warped Tour, to be on it for one. And to also to hang out with the bands and listen to the music and stuff. And so I got to know those guys really well. Nicola is a chess player, and I play a lot of chess. So he would come on our bus every night, and we would listen to music and play chess. The other two guitarists were avid skateboarders, so we would skate in the parking lot, and wherever they would come to the ramp and everything and watch us skate or do our demos. So I got to become really good friends with them and over the years. And so when Tony Hawk Pro Skater video game came out, they asked us what some of our favorite bands and what would you like to hear in the game. And the first thing I said was Milencollin, so that's how we got on there. And then the next year went on tour, and we went up to Australia for the Vans Warped Tour, and I discovered Bodyjar. Yeah. And I fell in love with them because they were on the tour and bought all their records. And so when they asked me next year, hey, what do you want to hear? I'm like, we got to put Bodyjar on there, And then the following year, I was ended up getting a faction tune on there as well. So
very sick.
Yeah. So that's how that came about. And so I'm friends with all those bands, and being on the Vans Warped Tour, I've become friends with a lot of bands, and I've gotten opportunities to go on stage and play a song with them. So I got a taste of being a rock star as far as like playing through, thousands of people. Just coming on stage. I played with bands like Blink-182, MXPX,
that's sick.
Pennywise, Goldfinger, Milencollin, Strung Out. So I played with all those bands at least one time or another. Yeah.
When you're just dropping all of these bombs,
that's a great resume there.
Well, yeah, I become friends with them as well, so that's helped this new band as well too. Because now I got a lot of connections.
Hey, there we go,
Yes.
hooked up.
So I'll drop a sneak peek, but we have some guest singers on our new album too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So Jim from Pennywise is going to appear on one of our songs.
Sick.
And I don't know if you're familiar with a band called H2O.
Yeah.
But Toby Morris is going to be singing on one of our songs. Yeah.
I love how we wanted to do this to like talk about the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series, and you've come on and just now we've got like the most anticipated like punk rock album ever, because you're just like, we've got working on this, we've got that, like.
Yeah, me and you are here like, whoa.
Well, like I said, the game has really influenced the generation, within skateboarding and allowing people to hear different types of music they never heard before. So I hats off to Activision for allowing that. And allowing us to be creative in that way and listen to our voice, So I think when big companies like that do listen to people and kind of go into the the trenches of what things are happening, the companies end up succeeding in that way because they're true to the core. And I think that's what happened with Vans shoes. Vans has come from nothing to one of the major players in footwear. And they could have went a different direction because they got so big and mainstream, but they always came back to the core of where they started. And for me, my shoe has been super successful on Vans because Vans listened to me and the direction I wanted to go with it. And that's why this year I'll be celebrating 30 years of my signature shoe called the Half Cab, because of them listening to me. Of like, my first shoe came out in 1989, which was a full top, high top Caballero shoe. And by 3 years later, people were cutting my shoe in half. And so I started doing that too. I started becoming trendy and I wanted to fit in and be like, I want to be like these new street skaters who are cutting my shoe. So I cut my shoe down, and like after the third pair, I'm like, what am I doing? Why don't I just call Vans? So I called them and I said, hey, there's a new trend going on with shoe. They're cutting my shoe in half. Let's do that. Let's make them that way, a mid top, and let's call it the Half Cab because it's going to be kind of like half of the Caballero shoe. And like I said, if they wouldn't have listened to me, I wouldn't be celebrating 30 years of that shoe next year.
I can see Wes getting excited now with the shoes.
With my relationship with music and everything, 10 years ago, I celebrated my 20-year anniversary, and Metallica had been a huge influence to me growing up. And through skateboarding, I've ended up being able to play, not play with them, but I've gotten to meet them, go to their shows, work with them and collaborate with them. 10 years ago, we collaborated with Vans. So now I have a signature shoe that has a Metallica Half Cab collaboration, and that's like one of my prized possessions in my collection. To getting to know the guys, and so that's a pretty pretty cool thing with music.
My first pair of skate shoes ever were the Cab 6s. So this is, kind of cool. The one with the dragon on the side. I used to love them things. Yeah. Re-release them.
No, I wish I could.
Yeah.
There was a stint in my career, my professional career, and with my relationship with bands where I was able to release a new design. And after we got to the Cab 8, they stopped allowing me to produce new shoes. And we just kind of just relied on the Half Cab collaboration. We've done some pretty cool collaborations with bands. And Vans has been a very good supporter with the arts and music and everything.
Yeah.
So
you only have to look at Warped Tour, don't you? The fact that they had it for as long as they did. It's a shame it's not around anymore. But yeah, the fact that it was just a touring festival, it was unlike anything else on the entire planet. There's nothing like that in the UK or in Europe. So for us over here, seeing that when we were growing up, that was another thing as well, to just get back to the Warped Tour. There is a lot of bands that I discovered as well would be off Warped Tour compilations. So the ones that would be sold at the Warped Tour, we would be able to buy them in local music stores. And that's how we'd find all these new bands on the back. It'd be 2 CDs, 20 odd tracks on each, 40 different bands. It's a shame that it's gone.
Well, I saw that thing grow from barely anything to this major monster. 1995, I get a phone call from one of my skate buddies saying, "Hey, I'm on this skate rock music tour. There's a ramp. There's about 6 bands, a couple vendors, and they're doing this tour. You want to hop on it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'd love to. What is it called?" It's called the Warped Tour. I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I went on it on the West Coast side. I started in Oregon and traveled all the way down California. And when I left the tour, I had such a great time because I got to skate twice a day, listen to some bands. And it was these small parking lots, venues. There was only one bus, maybe 2 stages, 1 ramp, a couple of vendors. And I remember there was a shoe company there called Simple Shoes. And they were the only shoe company involved in the whole Warped Tour. So I go back and I have a meeting with Vans, Steve Van Dorn. I go, "Hey, we should get on this Warped Tour and have a booth. Be sick. There's skateboarding, there's music." There was only 6 bands, and sure enough, I get a call from Steve Van Dorn. He's like, "Hey, dude, we're doing the Vans Warped Tour, but now it's going to be called the Vans Warped Tour because instead of just putting a booth there, they bought the whole tour." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this was because I said, "Hey, we need to be on this tour because this is a great idea. There's skating, and then there's music right there with it, So, and it grew and grew and grew to what it was, I was on it for 10 years straight, and I think it had, I'm not sure how many years it went for, but it went over at least 15 years.
I want to say 25 was the final one, because my band played it in 14, 15 and 17. And then we did the final one in, I forget the name of it. It was I can't remember the name. It was one of the last cities. It was the one on the beach in 2019. The name escapes me of the city, but we played one of the last ones, which was pretty bittersweet, to be honest, because it was amazing. There was nothing else like it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Steve, honestly, so all of the stories you've dropped, I've just been blown away. I've seen Wes smiling throughout as well, his tiny little mind. His mind's just been blown. Just to end on, it'd be really cool to get your thoughts on why do you think the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series has been so successful and resonated with so many kids across the globe, whether they were skaters or not?
why is the game been successful? Because, well, it was very fun and challenging to play, for one. They were diving into this new way of presenting video games for people to play, and just I think the designers behind it being very creative and listening to just trying to capture the feeling of skateboarding as close as you can, and allowing it to be as real as possible, and allowing the culture to sit in as well. Not every band listens, or every skateboarder listens to punk rock. So on the soundtrack, there's all different types of music on there as well. So I feel like, with anything, everyone's trying to like be better and do better. Whenever I filmed a skateboard video, I wanted my next video part to be as at least better than the last one, and the fact that I was able to have actual real skateboarding at the end of the video game, or like you could unlock your character's secret tape and show real skateboarding.
You got the tapes at the end, yeah.
Might have also attracted people to the real thing of skateboarding when they saw just playing video game, and all of a sudden, oh wow, they can actually do some of these tricks, and it looks super fun. So that in turn, the game actually helped me want to skate better and produce a better video for the game as well. So there was times where I tried to collect as much footage. I'd be filming for some other video and say, hey, can I grab some of that footage because I want to put it in the game as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you very, very, very much for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. It's been great speaking to you.
I love your action figures too. I'm a huge fan of Godzilla. And
oh, dude, it's both sides of the room. Yeah. There's so many.
Yeah.
Some of the old ones up there, the Shogun Warrior ones there.
I got that one. Yeah, with the shooting fist.
Oh, dude, I found it we were away in America, and I found it in a flea market. The Godzilla for like $30. The guy didn't really know the value of it, and I was like, I will buy that right now. So, yeah.
You do Ultraman as well?
Yeah, love Ultraman. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I'm into a lot of Japanese stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Japan's have had a lot of fun with being creative and imaginary things, and things that attracted us. And another cool thing about videos and Japan and games and everything. Just my daughter is really into anime, and I don't really watch that much. But she said, "Hey, Dad, there's a new one that's come out called Skate Affinity. It's all about skateboarding."
Yeah.
So I started watching it and got attracted to it, and the fact that she is now she started out skateboarding, but then she kind of got out of it and started playing video games stuff. Mm-hmm. But that anime has gotten her back into skateboarding.
That's class.
So even stuff like that, an animation that has skateboarding in it can also attract people into the sport as well.
It's the new Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
Seriously, right. Steve, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And to everyone else on the call as well, thank you so much for setting this up. It's been awesome. So seriously, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys for listening.
See you soon.
Take it easy, guys.